Hey everyone! Welcome to some nice low lighting set review for Magic 2019. And today we're going to be going over my least favorite color, red. I don't dislike red, I'll draft red if it's open, but it is my least favorite color, so yeah. But we're just gonna jump right into it. If you haven't watched the previous videos and don't know what's like how I'm evaluating cards, go back and watch the video for white. Otherwise, mostly for the most part, I'm evaluating for limited, and I might make a comment if it fits into any established decks, but I'm gonna be doing probably a separate video for that, for talking about Commander and stuff like that. And there also might be a side announcement for things related to Commander of and some restructuring of the channel and how I'm doing stuff. So yeah, and specifically my Magic content. But that is a time for another topic for another time. And for right now, we are going to talk about M19. So first up, we got Active Treason. It's we get a lot of these effects. Pretty much one in about every block or so. Although I guess blocks aren't a thing now. But it's 2 and a red for a sorcery that's gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn. So you steal something, you can attack with it for a turn. In a very aggressive deck, it can be like a decent finisher because it gets blocked out of the way and you get to push through some damage. I typically don't find myself running them, these like active treason type effects. It's kind of weird that because it's like you kind of like call them in other sets active treason type effects, but this one is just active treason. So but yeah, so I'm not big on this, but since there is kind of this black-red sacrifice deck, there is the combo of steal their thing and then sacrifice it to a sacrifice outlet and essentially get value that way, which is cool. And I think if you have those sacrifice cards, like this goes up, but and it's fine even if you don't. But if you're in that deck and if you are aggressive enough, I could see running 1, maybe 2, but it's not something you're going to want to take very highly. Alpine Moon. This is 1 red for an enchantment with, when it enters the battlefield, choose a non-basic land name. Lands your opponent's control of the chosen name lose all land types and abilities, and they gain tap, add 1 mana of any color. This is unplayable. This is made for constructed. It is not playable in limited, so don't play it. That said, got flavor text from Tamio. Oh yeah. Next we have Apex of Power, which is a 10 mana, 7 red, red, red. Exile the top 7 cards of your library. Until end of turn, you may cast non-land cards exiled this way. If this spell was cast from your hand, add 10 mana of any one color. It is a powerful effect, but the fact that it costs 10 mana really makes it just prohibitively expensive and limited. So I'm gonna have to say that it's probably not worth running. So I'm sorry, Apex of Power. Alright, next up we have Banefire, which is X and a red for a sorcery that deals X damage to any target. If X is 5 or more, it can't be countered and damage cannot be prevented. The second line isn't the super relevant, but it might come up in limited. But this is a very good card, like Fireball, great card. Or I guess this is closer to like a Heat Ray, I think it's called. But no, this is a very good card. I mean, it's just that it can be creature removal, it can be a finisher because it like can just go face. This is this is a premium spell and probably one of the better red spells. Like, it's hard to get out of doing X-1 damage. Like, this can end games. Like, it's a great draw on defense. Like, it can fight through board stalls. It's good in both more aggressive strategies and very controlling decks. So, and also, it's only 1 red, so very splashable. Like, this is a card I would splash for, even if you're playing any sort of like control deck. If you can splash for it, do it. Next we have Boggart Brute, which is a 3-mana 3/2 with Menace. I mean, it's a solid attacker. I mean, it fills out your curve. You could have a worse attacker. 3/2 Menace, it does get pushed through a fair amount of damage, and 3 power will at least you force them to make trade for one of the things, if not multiple things, and just kind of makes it really awkward to block. So, I mean, for your standard fair creatures, it's not bad. Next up is Catalyst Elemental, which is 2 and a red for a 2/2 that you may sacrifice to add red. This one's weird. I don't really know how to evaluate it. Using it just for a ramp perspective isn't that good, and spending a card on this where you're not even really gaining mana, like it's not like a Pyretic Ritual where you're gaining mana on the exchange. It's not one thing that you can like cast at that turn and do that. So essentially it's like wait 1 turn, then sacrifice, do that. And a 3 mana 2/2 isn't that great, so all said, I do not think it's a good card, and I would not recommend running it. Okay, next up we have Crash Through, which is a sorcery, and it's creatures you control can trample until end of turn, draw a card. I think it's fine. There is that blue-red spells matter deck, and like the fact that this just cycles for 1 mana is quite nice. Like, there's more embarrassing spells to run. And yeah, like in an aggressive like creature-based strategy, like it can be used to help push through some damage if you need to, and for the worst place, but most of the time you're going to be using this to pay 1 red and just cycle it, and probably hope to get some values off of instants and sorceries. And it can press through damage at the end, but to close out a game. But it's nothing amazing, but it's a very kind of low risk card to run. Next up we have Dark Dweller Oracle, which is a 2 mana 2/2, and you can play 1 and sacrifice a creature to exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. I mean, it's a 2/2 for 2, which makes it playable. And that ability to essentially kind of like pseudo draw a card, like impulse draw it's called, for like it lets you, like, if you have any like sort of token makers like in the white-red deck, or like any way to make like small creatures, this can become like a decent engine for making, like, being that some value. Or like in a situation where it's like, oh, you get something that's targeted for removal, you can sacrifice in response and things like that. It is awkward because it doesn't say you may cast this card, so like if it's your opponent's turn, you don't get to like instant speed, like pop out a creature or something, or a sorcery, but I think it's okay. I don't think it's amazing. I'm still not super sold on the sacrifice deck. Like, obviously the dream, if you have any of the really good enablers, like reassembling skeleton, this just becomes like, that's just like a great engine. But otherwise, I'm okay. Like, the floor is, you get a 2/2 for 2 that will give you some card advantage, and that's not bad. So I like this card, but I don't think it's anything insane. Next up is Demanding Dragon, which is a 5 mana, 5/5 flyer. Already great. I'm already down for that. And when it enters battlefield, it deals 5 damage to target opponent unless that player sacrifices a creature. The red-green archetype is dragons. And that's kind of like ramp into dragons strategy. And 5/5 mana, 5/5 flyer is great. It also kills a creature of theirs or does 5 to their face. This is just a really good card, and it's a really solid flyers. Flyers are very strong in this set. Which honestly, in a lot of ways, since there are also like so many of these like big dragons, like granted this is a rare, that it does kind of reduce the utility of a lot of the smaller flyers in white and blue. Just because it's like we've seen both in black and blue and red, we've been seeing some like really massive like flying finishers. So when we get to green and there's any like clip wings or plummet effects, those will be very good. Next we have Dismissive Pyromancer, who is a 2-mana 2/2, again, playable. You can play red and tap it to discard a card, then draw cards. You can rummage, it can be a rummage engine, which is quite nice. I would be down for that. And you can also pay 2 and a red and sacrifice it to deal 4 damage to target creature. So you lose it on that one, but it's one of those things where it's like, the second effect, it's like, having that available to you, like, is just such a great ability. This is great, like, on turn 2, because, like, it can turn sideways and do things like that. And then turn 3, it can sacrifice self if you need to take out a threat or something that's too big for it. But, on a stalled out board, like, it just becomes this, like, rummage engine, which is, like, a pretty good value engine. And this is just a real good card. I really like it. I'm a fan of Dismissive Pyromancer. Next is Double Cast, which is red for sorcery. When you cast your next instant or sorcery this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This is one where I could feel it could be very good if you can reach that critical mass of instants and sorceries, which, like I've said in the blue video, can be hard to reach that critical mass of instants and sorceries. Because it's like, in Constructed, obviously your instants and sorceries are going to be premium card draw, premium like burn and removal, and obviously that's great, and this might see kind of a place here. The thing is that premium card draw and good burn removal are things that non-spellslinger decks already want. So you're going to be fighting over those kind of cards, and the likelihood to get you to like that critical mass of like good instances of sorceries is a good deal harder. Where if you can get to that point where you have like a good like at least 5+ like spells that you would want to double, like that's great. And this becomes quite nice. But if you don't, this probably isn't worth it, because it's just very situational. You have to have both the mana to cast both spells. You have to have the both these spells in your hand. Like if you draw this like late game and you got nothing in your hand and you're trying to find a removal spell, this is just a complete dud. So I think it can be situationally good, but nothing amazing anyway. Next up we have Dragon Egg, which is a 3-mana 0/2 defender, and when it dies, create a 2/2 red dragon creature token with flying. With red, this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So it's a 3-mana 0/2 that essentially makes a 2/2 flyer when it dies. I'm a fan of this. Like, essentially you'll get one chump block out, and it makes their attacks really awkward because you get this 2/2 flyer. Like, a 2/2 flyer with fire breathing for 3 is a pretty solid, birds and things creature. And the fact that you also get like a free chump block out of it, and it obviously works well with like any sacrifice outlets you have. That like I feel like this can slot into pretty much almost any red deck in the format, kind of. You know, I'm a fan of Dragon Egg. I also like that as the egg creature type. Next we have Electrify, which is a 4-mana instant that deals 4 damage to a creature. Famously one of the main answers to Glorybringer and Amonkhet, or common answers to Glorybringer. But it's fine. It's a bit overcosted, and you probably don't want to run more than 2, maybe 3. But I mean, you gotta have your removal. It is limited. You need to be able to kill creatures, and this kills creatures. So, yeah, nothing too fancy. Fiery Finish, which is an even more disappointing burn spell. It is a 6-mana sorcery that deals 7 damage to target creature. I mean, it'll kill almost anything you pointed at, but it is 6 mana, it's sorcery speed. I'm not big on this. It's not great. Like, you might run the first one if you don't have other removal, but this should kind of be your last resort removal. Unless they have, like, if you're like a red deck that like has decent other burn, but like your burn like you realize you might sideboard it in if you're like your opponent has something big that you just can't take off your other burn. But I'm not big on fiery finish. Next is Fire Elemental, nice and classic, which is a 5-mana 5/4. It's fine. You probably can find better 5-drops, but I mean its stats aren't the worst. They could be a lot better, but it's a Fire Elemental. It's not great, but you might run them sometimes. That said, in formats I've played with them, I rarely, if ever, run them. Next we have Goblin Instigator, which is a 2-mana 1/1 that when it enters battlefield, create a 1/1 red goblin creature. So this is obviously great in the go wide deck. It's great in kind of like as like probably like sacrifice fodder if you're doing like if you have any of the good sacrifice outlets. And it's just 2-mana 2/2 power spread across 2 creatures, which I mean it's nothing insane, but it's definitely playable. And not just playable, but quite good. And you'll be happy to pick up lots of these. Next up we have Goblin Motivator, which is 1 red for 1/1. You can tap and give target creature haste until end of turn. This is like the Blood Rush Insider from Amonkhet, which turned out to be like a decent card. Like, this one is probably gonna be, like, it depends on the speed of the format, obviously, but this can be, like, especially if you're in, like, green and you want to, like, just, like, write, like, an explosive Colossal Dreadmaw or whatnot, like, it is not great if you don't have in your opening hand, and I wouldn't run more than 1, but, it can do work and kind of just, like, causing, like, a big threat to come out of nowhere. If you are the kind of like the small go wide deck version, you probably don't want this as much just because you don't have that, like, the power of this is being able to be like, I play my Colossal Dreadmaw or my Giant Dragon or something, give it haste, swing in. That's kind of this thing's power. And if you're going wide, you don't necessarily want this. It also depends on the speed of the format. If the format ends up it could very well not support this, but given the trend of Blood Rush Insider, I'm gonna lean towards, yeah, it's a solid 1 of. Next we have Goblin Trashmaster, which is a 4-mana 3/3 that gives other goblins you control +1/+1. You can sacrifice a goblin to destroy target artifact. The second line isn't super relevant and limited, but it's a 4-mana 3/3, and that's a Lord, and I mean, if you have enough other goblins, and we've seen there's been a fair few other goblins, like, if you have at least a couple of, like, the thing that makes goblin tokens, that's another thing. We've actually seen a card at common that makes 2 goblins for just 2 mana, and all of a sudden that becomes 2 mana making 4 power, that this can be very powerful, and, like, a great, like, even if you have, like, a couple, like, a few other goblins in your deck, this can be quite solid. Like, it is a 4-mana 3/3, which is not great, but it's playable. And if you only have a few other goblins, and obviously if you have enough goblins, it can become quite good. So, also it's a great name for a Goblin Trashmaster. Next up we have a Gutter Snipe, which is a 3-mana 2/2 that whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, Gutter Snipe deals 2 damage to each opponent. This is obviously a great means of just like payoff for like the instance of sorcery deck and that kind of like archetype that you're going in. You do probably want at least 4 to 5 instances of sorceries before you start running this guy, because it is a 3-mana 2/2. But once you do, like this can like add up a lot of damage and kind of like definitely like burn out and like wheel your opponent down. So Gutter Snipe can do work. Next up is Havoc Devils, which is a 4-mana 4/3 trample. It's fine. It'll push through some damage. I mean, if you sitting your 4 slot isn't overloaded, because 4 slots do tend to get high competition limited, I think it's fine. It's nothing amazing, but yeah. I like to see that there's devils back. Like, we really haven't really seen them since you don't really see them on Innistrad. But yeah, devils. Next up is a Hostile Minotaur, which is a 3-3 haste. Again, it's a fine 4-drop, but it's nothing insane. Play it if you don't have too many 4-drops, but there's probably better things you could be running in this slot. Yeah. Next up is an Inferno Hellion, which is a 4-mana 7/3 trample. At the beginning of each instep, if Inferno Hellion attacked or blocked this turn, its owner shuffles it into their library. I don't think I'm a fan of this. The fact that it doesn't have haste, if it had haste, then obviously, yeah, that becomes really nice, because it's like, your 7 damage coming out of nowhere, sure, will go away later, but yeah, I'm not big on this. Like, sure, you might draw it later, but even then, it's like, what are you drawing with 7/3 with trample? That, like, that's assuming it doesn't die, and yeah, I mean, sure, a 7 power with trample will probably push through some damage, but the fact that you have to wait a turn and that they know it's coming, they can block it, and things like that makes me not super high on Inferno Hellion. Next up is Lathless Dragon Queen, which is a 6-mana 6/6 flying. Whenever a non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. You can also pay 1 red to give creatures you control +1/+woe until end of turn. Well, first of all, it is a 6-mana 6/6 flying, which is insane and amazing. You should play that. We saw, like, there's cheap dragons, like there's the Dragon Egg and things like that, where that also comes with a 5/5 flying dragon. So it's like, its base stats alone with like a 6/6 flyer with pseudo fire breathing is already amazing. Staple on the fact that any incidental dragons you have all of a sudden come with 5 extra power just makes this such a powerhouse and so great. Like, 2 thumbs up for Lathis. Like, great card unlimited. You don't even need to trigger it once to be a good card, and if you do, you're winning that game. Next up is Lava Axe, which is a 5-mana sorcery. Lava Axe deals 5 damage to target player or planeswalker. It's Lava Axe. If you're kind of like playing an aggressive deck, you might run one as like a finisher for some extra reach. I wouldn't run more than 1 Lava Axe. Like, it only does one thing. It does 5 damage to their face. Which is fine, but it's not for all decks. I typically don't have a lot of decks where I want to run effects like this, but again, it's fine, and it can get you out of nowhere and finish out games quickly if you're kind of playing this aggressive deck, so it can be good there. Next up is Lightning Mare, which is red for a 1/3/1, which is not a stat set I'm super excited about. That cannot be countered, and Lightning Mare cannot be blocked by blue creatures. And you can pay 1 red to give it +1/+0 until end of turn. That 1 toughness is just really bugging me. I don't think this is playable. You might sideboard it again against a primarily blue deck, but the fact is that it just does not do enough, and its stats are not great, and yeah, that's all I have to say. Not a fan of Lightning Mare. Cool art, but I'm not feeling it. Alrighty, next up we have Lightning Strike, which is 1 red for an instant that deals 3 damage to any target. It's the slightly more expensive Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt, one of the most defining cards of Magic because it is very good. For 1 mana more, it is still an extremely good card. Easily first pickable. It's an amazing card. It's super versatile. It's good removal. You can hit face if you need to finish out a game. Lightning Strike, very good card. I mean, I shouldn't have to tell you that Lightning Strike is good. Take it. Also, I love the Theros art. Next up we have Onake Ogre, which is a 3-mana 4/2. I'm not big on this. I'm not a fan of the 3-mana 4/2 types of creatures, and this is no exception. They just usually trade down, and like they can trade up, like defensively, and they're not terrible, but I'm not big on it, and there's better 3-drops you could be running. So, not big on Onake Ogre. Sarkhan, Fireblood, who is a 3-mana 3 loyalty planeswalker with +1. You may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Loots, I'm like, it's not a looter, but a rummager. Like, it's not bad. I mean, that's an effect that you might want to be running. +1, add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast dragon spells. If you're in that like red-green dragon deck, that can be relevant. And -7, create 4 5/5 red dragon creatures with tokens of flying. So obviously this one is like keyed into dragons, kind of how like Liliana was keyed into zombies. But at least this one like does stuff if you aren't in dragons. So obviously if you're in dragons, this becomes quite nice because like you play this turn 3, turn 4, you're untapping with like 6 mana, which can cast most dragons. It can help you splash for your elder dragons and things like that. But that said, even if not, like, it's a rummager every turn, which is solid. And the fact that they do have to kill it eventually, like, so it will gain you some life, is rummaging is relevant effect. And, I mean, if they don't deal with it, you're A, getting tons of, like, card selection and value, and B, if you get off that ultimate, that's 20 power in the air, and that will end the game. So, I don't think Sarkhan's amazing. He's not a phenomenal planeswalker, but I think he, like, you could do worse for a 3-drop in a red deck. And I quite like him. Also, Sarkhan's back. Yay. Next we have Sarkhan's Unsealing. This is Sarkhan doing a nice fun unboxing video on a Hedron, but it's a 4-mana enchantment. And whenever you cast a creature spell with power 4, 5, or 6, Sarkhan's Unsealing deals 4 damage to any target. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 7 or greater, Sarkhan's Unsealing deals 4 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. Okay. This is a lot to break down. So first of all, if you play anything that's like 4, 5, or 6 power, which will for the most part be like your, essentially, whenever you cast some 4 or 5 or 6 drop stuff, you get to essentially do 4 damage to something, which is a great effect. And whenever you cast a creature spell with power 7 or greater, you essentially get to semi-raft their board. This is one that, like, I think it's very hard to evaluate, and it's a very cool card. Like, obviously the ideal situation is, like, you play this turn 4. Turn 5, you play, like, whatever, like, red or, like, green, like, 4 or 5 drops that has 4 or more power, and you get to, like, electrify something, or, like, even just have it go face, and then, like, that's value over time. And I feel like this is amazing if you have at least, I'd say, 5, preferably more targets, that, like, can activate this. Like, even if you don't reach the 7 or greater power one, like, the first version is just so good, and essentially knocking, pretty much attaching stapling or removal spell to each of your big creature spells can just, like, steal a game. That said, it is a 4-mana enchantment that does nothing when it hits the battlefield, which is a problem. But I feel the upside is there, that if you can, like, have critical mass of those creatures that will trigger this, like, obviously if you're in this, like, in your, like, spell slinger, you're not going to do this, or, like, go wide creature strategy, you're not going to do this. But if you're in this, like, big red or big black or big green kind of style of deck, this can just, like, steal games and just, like, let you run away with things. So I like Sarkhan's Unsealing. Also, I really like that art. So, yeah. Next is Shank, which is 1 red for an instant, where that deals 2 damage to any target. Like Lightning Strike, this is very good. There is actually a pretty good debate that will depend on the format, and whether, if in the pack 1 pick 1, do you take the Shock or Lightning Strike, assuming like those like the top 2 cards. Like, this is one of those things where it's like thinking generally I think Lightning Strike's better, but there are some formats where Shock might be the pick, and obviously I'm not sure where that is, but either way, Shock is very good. Like, it's a Shock. Yeah. Like red, red has Lightning Strike, Shock, and Electrify, and like, why is that like 6 mana, like steal 7 damage to our creatures in there? Like, we have enough burn already, like, to burn out creatures. Next up is Siegebreaker Giant, which is a 5 mana 6/3 trample, and you can pay 4 mana to have target creature cannot block this turn. This is very good. First of all, 5 mana 6/3, and it's not like 3 mana is a liability, but the fact that it has trample is very nice. And the fact that you can just shut down blockers. Like, obviously it doesn't work on the defense very well, but this can be just like, oh, this big thing that like with 3 power that could block this guy? Yeah, no, he can't block. And like, once you get to 8 mana and you're starting to like just like disable 2 things on the attack, like that, like it's good defensively also, because it's like they have to leave back stuff to block this giant 6/3, and yet they have to leave out multiple things, otherwise you're gonna do it. So even though its ability doesn't prevent them from attacking, like the threat of activation on your turn to just like swing in for a bunch of damage does. So I really like Siegebreaker Giant. I think this is going to be one of the premium red cards as well. In a lot of different strategies, it's good in kind of like both like mid-range as well as kind of like an aggro finisher and things like that. And I mean, granted, like I'm talking aggro as in limited aggro, which is still like mid-range. But like, it's good in all sorts of decks. Like, its 3 power is a liability. It can be Lightning Striked, but I do like it a lot. Next up is Smelt, which is 1 red for an instant, destroy target artifact. This is a sideboard card. There's not much else to say. Sparkton Dragon, which is a 5 mana 3/3 flying, and when it enters battlefield, well, first of all, 5 mana 3/3 flying is fine. If you have other things that care about dragons, that obviously improves it. But I mean, 5 mana 3/3 flying is okay. It's not great, but you could do worse for a 5 mana spell. But when it enters battlefield, you may pay 2 and a red, so it kind of is kicker. So if you pay 8 mana, it also deals 3 damage to any target, so it comes with its own lightning bolt. I think it's fine. Like, if you're in that kind of like ramp deck, like getting 8 mana is a cost, and when it becomes 8 mana, bolt something coming, and so you also get a 3/3 flyer. That isn't, I would say, like it's a fairly costed effect, but it's not bad. Like, obviously it is a 5-drop, so you don't want to be running too many of them, but I think it's fine. And if you have anything that like synergizes with dragons, like this is a dragon. Next was Spit Flame, which is 2 and a red for an instant that deals 4 damage to target creature. Like, 3 mana deal 4, that's already a real solid effect. And whenever a dragon enters battlefield under your control, you may be red. If you do, return it to your graveyard to your hand. This is one of those where it's like, it's good on its own, it's just a good removal spell on its own, and the fact that you have incidental dragons in your deck, you get to get it back and constantly buying it for very cheap, makes it this is just a great card. I mean, removal is the most important part of a limited deck, and this is real solid removal, and removal that you could potentially recur. So, like, Spartan Dragon, like, if you have Spit Flame in your deck, this, like, any dragons go up way up in terms of your stuff, because this just does so much. Next is Sure Strike, which is 1 in red for an instant. Target creature gets +3/+0 against first strike until end of turn. I mean, it's a combat trick, but as combat tricks go, like, there's very few combats that Sure Strike does not cause you to win. So yeah, no. Like, it's a 2-mana combat trick, which is, like, the upper end of what you usually want to pay for a combat trick, but Sure Strike's good. It's fine. And if nothing else, like, if you have, like, a flyer or something, like, it can be used to just punch 3 extra damage through, which is, like, 1 at red for bolt to face. Not bad. So, I don't mind Sure Strike. You don't want to run more than 1, maybe 2. Because you don't want to run more than that many combat tricks, but as combat tricks go, like, Sure Strike's, I think, one of the better ones. Next up is Tectonic Rift, which is 3 in a red for sorcery. Destroy target land. Creatures without flying cannot block this turn. Okay, this is an interesting one. Because we've seen, like, the second part, the creatures without flying cannot block this turn. So in a way, it kind of gives your entire team flying, if you can think about it that way. Which can push through and be a great stuff. It's also a 4-mana land destruction, which is, like, it's a little bit expensive, but it's doable. And those 2 effects together can be nice. Like, although that said, they are kind of at odds with each other. Because normally, like, these sort of, like, what is in Shadows that had this, Magmatic Chasm. Like, usually when I cast those spells in the game. So, like, destroying a land isn't going to change that. But I guess this is one, like, it's like, okay, if you're, like, on turn 4, you have nothing else to do, you can, like, blow up one of the lands. And if not, it can be a finisher. So, but, like, I think either of the effects, both the effects are, like, overcosted, but, like, the flexibility of it, makes me, like, oh yeah, I'd probably run this as a 1-of in my deck. And I'd be happy running that. Like, there's a lot of situations where it can be real good. You can help, like, just... Land destruction lately has been very overcosted, but the fact that it's, like, 4 mana is not great, but if you want to destroy land, especially if you destroy up one of their colors, can really put them on their back foot. And the fact that it also, on the other side of it, comes with this, like, finisher effect, can be really good. Like, obviously, I wouldn't run this if you're, like, already running, like, your top and is already, like, dragons and stuff that already have flying. But if you're running this in, like, kind of, like, go wide, low to the ground deck, it can be really nice, as well as, yeah. I think it's, like, it's one of those things where it's, like, in the ideal situation, you hold on to this, and you cast it, and it's, like, you end the game. But if not, it's one of the situations where it's like, okay, I'm on turn 4, I don't have anything else to play, I blow up your only island, now you're cut off of blue. And kind of, like, get value out of that way, while not losing, like, essentially using it as a tempo bump up. And I don't think it's amazing, but I'd run one of them in my decks. Next up is Thud, which is 1 red for sorcery. As additional cost to cast the spell, sack a creature, and Thud deals power to damage equal to the sacrifice's power to any target. I am not a fling fan, and the main utility of fling is that it is instant speed. This is sorcery speed, because, like, you want to put, like, fling things in response to a removal spell or a bad block or something like that, and this, you can't do that. So, I'm not high on Thud. No thudding for me. And also, this is one where it's, like, a lot of the other sacrifice stuff where it's like, oh, I'll just sacrifice, like, a cheap 1/1 or something, but it's like, this one cares that you want to sacrifice, like, a good creature, and you don't want to do that. Next is Tormenting Voice, which is 1 in red for sorcery, and as additional cost to cast it, discard a card, draw 2 cards. This is fine, especially if you're kind of in this, like, instant sorceries deck. Like, this can be, like, a real solid, like, enabler for, like, your Gutter Snipes and Enigma Drakes. I think it's fine. Like, if you're not, like, obviously I think its utility goes down if you don't have other card draw. I feel like other card draw is usually better than this. But you'll run 1 or 2 Tormenting Voices and be happy with it. Next up is Trumpet Blast, which is 2 in red for an instant that gives attacking creatures +2/+0 until end of turn. I'm not a Trumpet Blast fan, but if you are in that, like, red-white go-wide deck, this can be a solid finisher or in a good attack, kind of, like, not blowout, but, like, cause a bunch of good trades and things like that, where I think that white kind of, like, combat trick that I forget what it is already, is so much better than this one. But, I mean, I think Trumpet Blast is not great, but I also know other people who would say otherwise. But, yeah, it's too aggressive a card for me, so I obviously don't like it. Aggro is bad. Next is Viashino Pyromancer. It is a 2-mana 2/1, and when it enters battlefield, it deals 2 damage to target player or planeswalker. Okay, this is very aggressive, so it's a 2-mana, and it comes in and it does 2 to the face, and it's a 2/1. I've talked about my opinion of 2-mana 2/1s. I'm not high on them, and I don't think doing 2 damage to target player or planeswalker changes my opinion on that. That said, I also don't like aggro, so, and this is like a very aggro card. Yeah, which is kind of interesting, because it's like, I don't like playing aggro unlimited, but it's like, one of my mottos, like in Commander, is just like, there's no zone like the red zone. I'm not a fan of like small go wide aggro. I like, if I'm gonna go into the red zone, I want to go in with like a big beefy creature. A creature like Colossal Dreadmaw. Now that's a creature. But yeah, no, I think there's an argument to be made on this if you're like in this very low to the ground deck and it does push through damage late game if you need to, and that does, if you get enough of these, that is a solid clock that you're putting on your opponent. But, and you could do worse for 2 drops, but I don't think it's very high, but I think it's just fine, it's playable. And next we have Volcanic Dragon, which is a 6-mana 4/4 flying with haste. This is just a beast. Like, oftentimes this will be a 6-mana deal 4 damage to target opponent, and you also get a dragon, so it cares about dragons, and it's also a dragon made of lava, which is just like sweet, and it cares about, like, yeah, no, I like this, like, Volcanic Dragon. It's something I have to like pay attention and watch out for, and like, I will probably lose more than my fair share of games to Volcanic Dragons out of nowhere. But yeah, no. Volcanic Dragon. Volley Veteran, which is a 4-mana 4/2, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals target damage to a creature an opponent controls equal to the number of goblins you control. So baseline, if you have no goblins, it's a 4-mana 4/2 stats that will ping an opponent or opponent's creature. And I mean, we've seen there's a fair few goblins, including that one common token maker, that like this can like add up pretty quickly, like and like kind of like take out a creature. We've also seen there's enough X1s in this format where like just pinging something is not bad. Where I feel like if you have at least like a handful of other goblins already in your deck, this becomes quite nice. And I feel like since goblins already spit out a lot of themselves, could definitely be a situation where it's like this will often just be like a 4-mana 4/2 with a removal spell tacked onto it. It becomes a goblin tongue, or a flame tongue goblin tongue kavu, but it's not kavu, it's a goblin. I don't know. You get what I'm trying to say. And that's quite nice. And yeah, no, that's the end of Red for Dominaria, Magic 2019. Only a couple more videos to go. We have Green, and then a shorter video which will be all about the Gold and Colorless. I don't actually know if it's gonna be shorter. I haven't counted how many there are, but yeah. So on the home stretch. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you disagree with many of my assessments, like, I know I do have a bias against Red because Red is very aggressive, and I am not an aggressive limited player. I like, my games are gonna go to time, and you're gonna like it. But yeah, so, yeah. Let me know if you disagree. I want to get better at this too, and I'll see you next video where we talk about green, the best color. The color of Colossal Dreadmaw. Ooh. Well, I'll talk to you all later. Alright, have a wonderful night, and may your story smile upon you.